Severe deformities, limited minds, and isolated lives marked whole generations. The most degenerate families, shaped by incest and cruel diseases transmitted through generations of closed blood. For decades, a dark reality remained hidden in the bowels of rural America. In the remote mountains of the Appalachians, specifically in the far west of Virginia, a community lived practically forgotten by the rest of the world. It is 1937, while the Great Depression still punished the country, and mountainous regions like this remained isolated not just geographically, but culturally and socially. The Callaway family settled in this region around 1850, when Jeremiah Callaway, a farmer from Pennsylvania, acquired cheap and unexplored lands. Over the decades, the family grew, but their contact with the outside world decreased dramatically. A lack of suitable roads combined with a natural distrust of outsiders turned the Callaways into a virtually self-sufficient community. The family's first significant contact with the outside world occurred in 1937, when a rural doctor named Dr. Elliot Montgomery, who tended to isolated communities offering basic care, came across a disturbing reality. "I will never forget what I saw that day," reported Dr. Montgomery in his medical diary, later donated to the University of Richmond. Children with obvious malformations, adults with distinctly similar facial characteristics, and an alarming prevalence of cognitive deficiencies. Dr. Montgomery's records, rediscovered only in 1973, revealed that among the approximately 42 Callaway family members inhabiting that mountainous region, at least 23 showed visible signs of genetic problems. Among the documented conditions were extra fingers, polydactyly, abnormal skull development, severe strabismus, and varying degrees of intellectual impairment. The doctor noticed something even more disturbing: the family tree. As he was able to rebuild it through conversations with the more articulated clan members, he found that marriages between first-degree cousins were common, with even cases of union between uncle and niece, as well as half-siblings forming couples. This was not just a geographically isolated family. It was a lineage that for generations had closed in on itself, intensifying harmful recessive genes. One of the most striking images described by Dr. Montgomery was of 3 Callaway children, aged 6 to 12, who had remarkably similar faces, prominent foreheads, very close-set eyes, underdeveloped chins, and the same empty expression. In his medical description, he noted that it seemed the same face had been printed 3 times, each with small variations of the same underlying condition. The family patriarch at that time, Obadiah Callaway, a 67-year-old man who surprisingly had no obvious physical deformities, explained to the doctor, "We take care of our own. The outside world doesn't understand our customs. Here, we keep our blood pure." Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. What you're about to find out goes beyond the imaginable, revealing family secrets society has tried to hide for decades. Do not miss any details of these forbidden stories that will change your vision of human nature. In 1952, 15 years after Dr. Montgomery's initial meeting with the Callaways, another health professional turned his attention to this family. Dr. Harold Winters, a geneticist at the University of Virginia, had found Montgomery's diaries and decided to investigate this unique case of genetic isolation. Winters organized a small team that included an anthropologist, a nurse, and a photographer. With the reluctant permission of Josiah Callaway, who had assumed family leadership after Obadiah's death, the team spent 2 weeks documenting the community's conditions. The produced report, entitled Genetic Isolation in the Appalachians, a Case Study, became a significant scientific document, though it remained restricted to specific academic circles for decades due to its sensitive nature. Dr. Winters documented that the 3rd and 4th generations of Callaways had alarming rates of congenital problems. Among the 16 children born between 1940 and 1952, 9 had severe cognitive deficiencies, 7 had visible physical deformities, and 5 did not survive beyond early childhood. "We are witnessing the devastating effects of homozygosity for harmful recessive genes," Winters wrote. When closely related individuals have children, the probability that both carry the same recessive deleterious gene increases dramatically. The result is the concentration of genetic traits that, in diverse populations, would remain rare and diluted. One of the most iconic cases documented was that of Eliza Callaway, a 16-year-old born with a condition known as syndactyly, the congenital fusion of fingers. In Eliza's case, all fingers on both hands were fused, creating a mitten-like appearance. Additionally, she had a severe curvature of the spine and limited verbal capacity. Most disturbing was Eliza's family history. Her father, Malachi Calloway, was also her uncle, her mother Rebecca's brother. This particularly close union resulted in an extreme concentration of problematic recessive genes. Dr. Winters recorded in his notes, Rebecca confessed to me that her other 3 children, all born with even more severe deformities, did not survive childhood. She attributes these deaths to divine will, but the real cause is undeniably genetic. The research also revealed the family had developed their own explanations for the conditions afflicting many members. They did not attribute the deformities and deficiencies to close kinship, but to a mixture of local superstitions and peculiar religious interpretations. Jebediah Calloway, one of the family elders, explained to the teen's anthropologist, when a pregnant woman is frightened by a wild animal, the child can be born marked. That is how it works. Since ancient times. This denial of the true cause allowed intra-family marriage patterns to continue for generations, perpetuating the cycle of genetic problems. While Dr. Winters documented the scientific aspect, the teen's anthropologist, Dr. Raymond Parker, focused on the social context that allowed such genetic isolation to persist for so long. Calloway isolation is not only physical but also ideological, Parker wrote. They developed a system of beliefs that values family blood above all, seeing any external marriage as an unwanted dilution of their lineage. In 1967, as winds of social change blew across America, life in the Calloway community remained virtually unchanged since the previous century. That year, a young, idealistic, newly graduated social worker named Martha Jenkins was assigned to evaluate conditions of isolated Appalachian families as part of a federal program to combat rural poverty. Jenkins meticulously documented her observations in official reports and her personal diary, providing a rare glimpse into the daily life of this family marked by consanguinity. The first thing that impressed me was the silence, wrote Jenkins. For a community with so many children, there was a remarkable absence of laughter and play. Many of the children would simply sit, staring at nothing, or repeat monotonous movements with their hands. The social worker documented the family's daily routine, revolving around basic subsistence tasks, maintaining gardens, breeding some animals, collecting wood, and maintaining their precarious dwellings. Most remarkable was how tasks were distributed according to the limited abilities of many family members. Ezekiel Calloway, a 40-year-old man with severe cognitive impairment, spends his days carrying stream water to the homes. It is the only task he can accomplish consistently, and the family has developed a system of sounds and simple gestures to communicate with him, reported Jenkins. Social life within the community was structured around rigid family hierarchies. The patriarch at that time, 72-year-old Josiah Calloway, made all significant decisions, from marriage arrangements to internal disputes. His word was final and undeniable. One of the most disturbing aspects documented by Jenkins was the practice of promising children for future marriages, often between cousins or even uncles and nieces. She witnessed as Abigail, a 12-year-old girl, was already promised to her first cousin, Isaiah, 14. If you have watched this far, it is because you understand the importance of knowing our hidden history. Comment now. Blood tells stories that words cannot express, and be part of this journey discovering truth society preferred to forget. Jenkins described in detail the condition of Ruth Calloway, a 32-year-old mother of 5, all conceived with her first cousin, Jeremiah. Ruth had a distinctly asymmetrical face, with one eye significantly lower than the other, and her movements were marked by involuntary spasms. 3 of her children had variations of the same condition in differing degrees. The most impressive thing is that for them, this is normal, wrote Jenkins. Ruth shows no awareness that her condition or that of her children is unusual. When I tried to approach the subject delicately, she simply answered, "We are all children of the Lord, made in His image." The social worker also registered the presence of what the family called the Room of Silence, a separate room in one of the main houses where family members with the most severe disabilities, some unable to walk or communicate, were kept. These individuals were cared for by older women in the family who fed them and performed basic care. The vision of that room will be forever recorded in my memory, wrote Jenkins. 6 people, ages ranging from 9 to 47, all presenting severe deformities, lying on straw mattresses on the floor. The odor was almost unbearable, despite obvious efforts to keep the place clean. Most disturbing was the silence. Even when I approached, only one of them reacted with a low moan. In her official report, Jenkins recommended immediate intervention by social services, especially for children. However, legal complexities and the family's fierce resistance prevented concrete action for several years. In 1978, the Callaway case gained new attention when Dr. Lawrence Richardson, a geneticist from the newly established Duke University Studies Center, obtained permission to conduct a comprehensive family study. With advances in human genetics during the 1970s, Richardson saw in the Callaways an unprecedented opportunity to study the prolonged effects of consanguinity in an isolated population. With a more sensitive and respectful approach than his predecessors, Richardson gained the cooperation of several family members, especially after offering free medical care as part of the study. The results were revealing and scientifically significant. Through detailed analysis of medical, phenotypic, and historical characteristics, Richardson mapped 5 specific genetic conditions that had become predominant in the family. Modified Waardenburg syndrome, a rare condition characterized by partial discoloration of hair, different colored eyes, and deafness in some cases. In the Callaways, this had combined with other traits, creating a unique, more severe variant. Cruzen syndrome, a disorder causing premature fusion of cranial sutures, resulting in abnormal skull and facial development, affecting about 35% of Callaways. Polydactyly, extra fingers or toes, affecting approximately 28%. Hereditary intellectual deficiency, ranging from mild to severe, present in almost 60% of family members to some degree. A rare form of skeletal dysplasia, causing abnormal body proportions and mobility problems in about 15% of the family. What we observed in the Callaways is an extremely rare convergence of multiple recessive genetic conditions, Richardson wrote in his 1979 report published in the Journal of Medical Genetics. In a genetically diverse population, each of these conditions would occur at very low frequencies. However, due to generations of consanguineous marriages, we see these conditions not only at high frequencies but also in combinations rarely or never documented in medical literature. One of Richardson's most studied cases was Isaiah Callaway, a 34-year-old man with a combination of Waardenburg and Cruzen syndromes. Isaiah had a distinctly unusual facial appearance, widely spaced, different colored eyes, one blue, one brown, an excessively prominent forehead, and an underdeveloped jaw. Despite these extreme characteristics, Isaiah had relatively preserved cognition and served as an unofficial family historian. Isaiah told me stories dating back 5 generations, reported Richardson. He described how his ancestors deliberately avoided external marriages, believing Callaway blood was special and chosen by God. This belief, passed through generations, served as a religious justification for practices that resulted in genetic devastation. Richardson's study also revealed something surprising. Despite the obvious genetic problems, the Callaway family had developed remarkable resilience. They created mutual care systems allowing even the most compromised members a role in the community. There is a complex social structure that developed over generations, said Richardson. Individuals with relatively preserved cognitive capacities assume responsibility for the more severely affected, in a system of interdependence that, while problematic, demonstrates a notable social adaptation to their genetic circumstances. Richardson's work first brought the Callaway case to the wider medical community's knowledge, though still discreetly, within specialized publications. The year 1983 marked the beginning of the end for Callaway isolation. A combination of factors, new road construction in the region, a growing presence of rural social services, and an investigative report in the Charleston Gazette, finally brought public attention to the family's situation. The report, entitled The Forgotten of the Mountains, included photographs with blurred faces and detailed their living conditions. The public response was immediate and forceful, with calls for state intervention. In March 1983, a multidisciplinary team from Virginia's Department of Human Services arrived at the Callaway property. They found a declining community, its numbers reduced to about 30, with a drastically reduced birth rate in the latest generation. Jebediah Callaway, who assumed leadership after Josiah's death in 1979, initially resisted but eventually relented when officials explained they intended not to separate the family, but to provide medical and educational assistance. It was as if a door to another world had been opened, reported Catherine Williams, the social worker leading the team. Many of the younger Callaways, especially those with less cognitive impairment, showed a huge curiosity about the world beyond their mountains. In the following months, several initiatives were implemented: comprehensive medical exams for all family members, the gradual introduction of children into the educational system with specialized support, and medical treatment for adults, in many cases for the first time in their lives. One of the most striking stories was that of Mary Calloway, a 17-year-old who, despite presenting the family's typical facial characteristics, had above-average intelligence. After receiving glasses for severe myopia and being introduced to educational materials, Mary demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for mathematics and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. In September 1984, she became the first Calloway to leave the mountains to study, enrolling in a special program at Roanoke Community College. Her adaptation was documented in a local newspaper article where she stated, "I feel like I was born again. There is so much to learn, so much to see." For older and more severely affected Callaways, the transition was more difficult. Many resisted changes, and some never fully adapted to increased outside contact. A significant aspect of the intervention was genetic counseling offered to the family. For the first time, they received clear explanations of how consanguineous marriages had contributed to their health problems. For many, this revelation was deeply disturbing, challenging fundamental beliefs passed down for generations. Hannah Calloway, a 42-year-old woman who had borne 5 children with her first cousin, only 2 survived childhood, expressed her anguish in a recorded interview for the Project Archives. "If we had known, if anyone had told us. We thought we were doing God's will by keeping our blood pure." In 1989, 6 years after the initial intervention, a follow-up assessment revealed profound changes. The original property now housed only 18 family members, primarily the elderly and those with conditions making integration difficult. Younger members had dispersed, some studying, others working in nearby towns. Most significantly, there were no new cases of consanguineous marriage, and the few children born during this period were from unions with people outside the family. Dr. Richardson, who continued to follow the family, published a final article in 1991 entitled "Interruption of a Consanguineous Cycle, Social Interventions and Genetic Outcomes." In it, he noted, "The Calloway case represents both a human tragedy and an opportunity for learning. Generations of isolation and intrafamily marriages created a microcosm of genetic pathologies we will likely not see again on this scale. More importantly, however, is that this cycle was finally interrupted, offering future generations a chance to escape the genetic destiny that imprisoned their ancestors." Medical records, genetic studies, and social documentation related to the Callaways have been preserved with protected identities in academic archives, serving as an important case study. They remain a dark testimony to the consequences of extreme isolation and prolonged consanguinity. If you watched this far, it is because you like this story. Leave a comment saying "I watched here" so I can meet you and know who really likes the stories here on the channel. And don't forget to subscribe right now to receive more impactful stories like this, real stories that reveal the darkest secrets and most tragic destinies of families marked by consanguinity through generations. Leave your like and share this video with someone you know would be fascinated by these disturbing revelations about the human condition.